In the Warhammer universe, the War of the Beard, or the War of Vengeance, stands as a significant historical conflict, deeply rooted in the distinct characteristics and long-standing tensions between elves and dwarves. The elves in Warhammer are depicted as ancient beings, inherently magical and skilled in warfare. Physically, they are slender but strong and capable of living for thousands of years, sometimes reaching ages as old as 6,000, though this is extremely unusual. Elves usually pass away not due to old age, in the human sense, but from growing weary of life's troubles. Their inherent connection to magic allows them to control many winds of magic, in contrast to human wizards who usually only master one form. Elves are also resistant to disease and physical mutations caused by chaos, although they remain vulnerable to certain afflictions like Nurgle's rot. Elves' ability to experience emotions and thoughts more intensely than most other races can lead them to spend centuries training and perfecting skills, but it also has a downside. They can become lost in their experiences, overindulging and losing touch with reality. This intensity of experience, coupled with their long lives and magical abilities, contributes to a culture often viewed as prideful and arrogant by other races, including the dwarves. This arrogance, along with their magical prowess, has been a source of diplomatic tensions and misunderstandings, particularly with the dwarves who view these traits with suspicion and envy. The elves' pride and magical abilities, while strengths, have also been the cause of many of their diplomatic failures. Their perceived superiority, especially in dealings with dwarves, has been a major factor in the escalation of conflicts leading to the War of the Beard. The elves' tendency to view other races as lesser beings, combined with their significant magical power, has often been interpreted as a threat or a sign of contempt, fueling resentment and hostility in races like the dwarves. The dwarves, on the other hand, are an ancient race, but not quite as old as the elves, but with a storied past. They once ruled a great empire known as Karak Angkor, spanning the world's edge mountains. This empire fell due to invasions by orcs, goblins, Skaven, and other malign races, leading to the dwarves becoming isolated in their remaining fortress cities. Many dwarves now live in cities of men, but those remaining in ancient dwarf cities are known as imperial dwarves, who are deeply secretive, insular, and chauvinistic. They are renowned as powerful warriors and have often supported other races, like the Empire, against common enemies. In terms of craftsmanship, dwarves are unrivaled masters of the forge, working with various metals and minerals, including the famed Gromril. Their skills in metalworking and crafting brilliant artifacts, along with the formidable inventions of the Dwarf Engineers Guild, showcase their technological prowess. Physically, dwarves are short, powerful, and squat, and uniquely resistant to magic, including the corrupting effects of chaos. However, they lack the ability to use magic outside their own unique power of rune smithing. The cultural traits of the dwarves revolve around a rigid and unyielding sense of honor, centered on bonds and promises. The importance of these promises transcends generations, binding dwarves to commitments made by their ancestors and seeking recompense from the descendants of oath-breakers. Serious breaches of faith against the dwarves are recorded in the Great Book of Grudges, a chronicle of their history. Dwarf engineers are known worldwide as unparalleled masters of science, gadgets, and technology. They are responsible for the creation of blueprints and schematics for new technologies and have been instrumental in developing a long line of technological advancements, including the legendary gyrocopter. In warfare, dwarf engineers serve as expert artillerymen, managing the army's machinery and cannons. They are also capable of piloting gyrocopters and employing an array of gadgets and black powder weaponry in combat. The unique characteristics and cultural traits of the dwarves, notably their resistance to magic and their deeply ingrained sense of honor and memory of grudges, played a pivotal role in shaping their relationships with other races, particularly the elves. This was evident in the way their advanced technology in warfare contrasted sharply with the elves' reliance on magic and agility. The resulting tactical disparity, coupled with the dwarves' unyielding pursuit of retribution for perceived wrongs, eventually culminated in a legendary conflict. This historic conflict, known to the elves as the War of the Beard and to the dwarves as the War of Vengeance, and sometimes referred to as the Dwarf Wars by both elves and men, marked a turning point in the relations between these races. The monumental war was fought between the dwarfs of the World's Edge Mountains and the High Elves of Ulthuan, along with their Old World colonies. Under the leadership of High King Gotrek Starbreaker, the dwarfs clashed with the High Elves led by Phoenix King Kalidor. The war left both races severely devastated, and the enmity between them has endured to the present day. The war also had profound repercussions on other events, including the rise of chaos and the Great Catastrophe, which led to the destruction of the ancient dwarf empire of Karak Angkor and the fall of the High Elf colonies in the Old World. Additionally, the conflict added numerous entries to the Great Book of Grudges, a chronicle of dwarven history, solidifying their long memory of wrongs. This enduring rift between the elves and the dwarfs stands in stark contrast to their earlier history. Long ago, before the time of Sigmar, during their Age of Discovery, the High Elves had allied with many races, including the dwarfs. This alliance marked a golden era, where the combination of cultures elevated the stature of both races. The dwarfs, already a great civilization when they first made contact with the Asur, were masters in the secrets of ancient runes and crafted the finest weapons in the world, many of which were gifted to the princes and dragon lords of the Asur. In return, the elves imparted knowledge to the dwarfs on enchanting items and shared their arts such as literature and poetry. This mutual exchange fostered flourishing trade, with elven silk and steel being highly valued by the Dawi, while dwarf armor, weaponry, and alcohol became common sights in Ulthuan. This period of cooperation and mutual respect led to the establishment of significant outposts such as the fortress of Sith-Rionask at the mouth of what is now the River Reich and the mighty city of Toralessi in present-day Bretonnia. In the Age of Strife and the tragic civil war called the Sundering, the Phoenix King Kalidor steered the High Elves through their time of turbulence after the murder of the previous king Bel-Shanar by Malekith, the son of the first king Enarion. However, as long as Malekith and his followers still lived, there would be no peace. After his defeat at the marshes of Malador and the exile of the Dark Elves to the cold land of Nagaroth, the Witch King hatched a plan, creating a spark that would become an inferno. In the Imperial Year 2005 Imperial calendar, several Druchii raiding parties were dispatched in secret to the Old World, with the intention of causing as much strife and unrest between the High Elves and Dwarfs as possible. The Dark Elves achieved this by posing as Asur, who were ambushing trading caravans, cheating Dawi merchants out of goods, and razing several smaller settlements to the ground. This led to the tighter strictures on dwarven trade routes, harsher sanctions on elves trespassing into dwarf territory, and ultimately the reckoning of many grudges against the Asur responsible. The High King Gotrek Starbreaker tried to avert conflict. Unaware of the civil war that had just taken place within Ulthuan due to the elves' refusal to speak of it, Starbreaker sent messengers to the elves demanding to know the reason for the attacks and why the Phoenix King did little to resolve the crisis. The reply was immediate and uncompromising. If Gotrek wanted recompense, he should come to the High Elf capital of Lothern and beg for it. The dwarfs were outraged, but Starbreaker attempted again to cool the temper of his kings and sent his best ambassadors and reckoners, led by Forik Grimbok, to Ulthuan to raise the issue with Kalidor. When the envoy arrived, many elves realized how serious the claim was, the Phoenix King's advisors among them. Kalidor recklessly denied the charges against him and the Asur and refused to even investigate the origin of the attacks. When Grimbok demanded once again that if the Elven court could not discover who of their number was responsible for instigating the unrest, then the court themselves would be held accountable, Kallador became uncontrollably angry at Grimbok. Fearing for his reputation, Kallador ordered that Grimbok be shaved off his beard and expelled from Ulthuan, gravely insulting him, the High King and the whole dwarf race by extension. Grimbok returned home, humiliated but with purpose. Starbreaker, upon learning the terrible truth, immediately ordered the forges and armories to begin preparing for war. Grimbok himself later became a slayer due to the shame the incident placed upon him. After mustering for almost a year, Dawi throngs marched to war on the elves, drawing troops from the far ends of the dwarfen realm. Ironbreakers of Karaz-a-Karak marched with Longbeards of Karak Asgal. Slayers from Karak Kadrin marched with Hammerers of Ekrund. Upon reaching Tor Alessi, Gotrek made an oath that he would extract recompense either in gold or blood from the High Elves, or he would shave his beard. With a desire to avenge their injured pride, the dwarfs were not about to let their king break his promise. Upon hearing of the assault on Tor Alessi, Kallador was outraged and ordered his generals to send an enormous fleet to relieve the city. The force that left Ulthuan was truly huge, dwarfing any navy before or since, and though the Council of Princes was worried that this would leave their lands undefended, Kallador was determined. Elves and dwarfs fought bitterly until Kallador slew the dwarf prince Snorri half-hand, after Snorri challenged him to single combat. Being tired of slaughter and wishing to reduce their losses, the elves then retreated. Seeking revenge for his cousin's death, Morgrim Baugrim led the forces that pursued the elves. For many years, the Asur retreated until they decided to stand and fight at Uragor. When the lines met, rivers of blood flowed and hundreds on each side lost their lives until Lord Imladric, the prince commanding the High Elf main army, was slain in single combat by Morgrim, and the elves retreated once again, this time leaderless. Morgrim was crowned a hero, and he continued to capture through the elven towns and cities across the old world, notably razing the city Athimaraya. The heroes Lord Salendor of Tor Achare and Brok Stonefist of Karak Azul, who had previously fought many great battles, eventually lost both their lives in the doomed city, crushed by the burning, crumbling towers. The dwarfs were quite unlike any foe the elves had ever faced, refusing to give up even when doom or defeat was assured for them. The war became a stalemate. The mountain fortresses of the dwarfs were unassailable, and the Dawi laid siege to Tor Alessi 13 times, but unable to penetrate the city's walls. Much of Athel Loren was destroyed as the war continued for another 450 years. At the 14th and final siege of Tor Alessi, which was later called the Battle of the Three Towers, for over 100 days, Dawi engines of war attacked the city's mighty walls, and when it proved fruitless, they instead focused upon destroying the finely constructed towers. Eventually, the dwarves gained entrance to the fortress, and Gotrek finally confronted Kallador at the heart of the city, where the pair dueled for 3 days on end, not stopping or disengaging for a second. Finally, when Kallador began to tire, Starbreaker disarmed him, broke his sword with the rune axe of Grimnir, and cast the Phoenix King to his knees. Pleading for his life, Kallador swore to surrender and sued for peace. However, Starbreaker not only saw that the king did not intend to keep his oath if his life was spared, but he also knew mercy was not his to give, only justice, executing him on the spot. As a final recompense demanded so many years ago, Starbreaker took the Phoenix crown from Kallador's head and declared the war to be ended. The remaining Asur briefly considered the impossible task of besieging Karaz-a-Karak in order to reclaim the crown, but by this time Malekith's plan had come to fruition, and the Druchii had launched a titanic invasion of Ulthuan, their legions of warriors razing the ancient sunken city of Anlek from the depths of the great ocean. With her armies depleted from the war against the dwarfs and caught in complete surprise by the Dark Elves' invasion, Ulthuan ordered that all the Azur, soldier, civilian and otherwise, retreat from the old world to defend the Asur homeland, while warning those that remained on the mainland would not be protected by Ulthuan. Though many left, those that felt they had little loyalty to Ulthuan chose to remain in their old world colonies and travelled to the forest of Athel Loren for protection and became the Wood Elves. The dwarfs, though victorious, were left dangerously weakened and unable to successfully combat Greenskin and Skaven incursions. This weakening allowed the Skaven to unleash a great catastrophe upon the Mountain Kingdoms in what is known by the dwarfs as the Time of Woes. Another phoenix crown was made to replace the first crown, which remained in the great treasure hoard of Karaz-a-Karak. The fortress of Sith-Rionask was flooded and dismantled brick by brick, marking the last result of the betrayal between elves and dwarfs. Although elves refused this claim, the dwarfs state to this day that they won the war. However, the war cost both sides hundreds of thousands of lives, along with cities, fortresses, mountains of treasure, and a powerful ally in each other. Neither side ever reached such heights of greatness ever again.